Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, almost evening for people in Europe. It's quite the day. Um, so it's lovely to see you all here. I always enjoy the Fibre Love Affair events. It gives me a chance to share some of my projects, my new patterns, and to teach a little something because, I can't spend a whole hour saying, oh, look at this pattern. Isn't it pretty? You should buy this. Got it. So I'll teach a little something today. I have uh, a handout for you. I've put a link to a Google Doc in the chat. And I will put that in a few more times as we continue. So anybody who enters late will be able to access the chat and get that. It's just a little document about ripple stitches because I have been using a lot of ripple stitches recently. My stitch play was ripple stitches. The cowl I'm wearing is ripple stitches. I'm having a little bit of fun with a ripple stitch moment. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about them because I have definite opinions about the ripple stitch. And it has, I see Katie laughing. She knows it has to do with symmetry. So I'm going to talk about how to make ripple stitches. And here I am just talking about a simple ripple stitch. Here it is, one repeat in the washcloth that came with the Stitch Play 26B pattern. That's what we're talking about today. Simple ripple stitches, just ones that wave across an item, whether it's a blanket or a shawl or a top. I think a ripple stitch like this would be really interesting across just a panel across the front of a top. But yeah, there are other stitches that ripple, and we might talk about that a little bit closer to the end, but I am talking specifically about ripple stitches today. And the traditional Shetland ripple stitch, whether you know the one that's called old shale or whether you know the one that's called feather and fan, and to be honest, people use those terms interchangeably. So even experts would say, well, this is feather and fan and this is old shale. And then you'll find another expert from Shetland going, no, that one you're calling feather and fan is old shale, and the one you're calling old shale is feather and fan. There are differences in those patterns, but I'm looking at the very traditional ripple stitch. And the Shetland pattern, Mom had a bad night. I was in and out of her bedroom all morning while the hockey game was on. I missed every bloody goal because I was sitting with my mom. But I don't have a swatch knit for you. So we're just going to have to pretend that we know what the swatch looks like when we look at the chart. So here is the chart for a traditional feather and fan. You've got two plain rows, you've got the eyelet row, and then you have a garter ridge. So generally you're working this in the flat. So when you do this row 4, you knit it back and it gives you this distinctive garter ridge in the pattern. Really gives the stitch pattern texture, and it really highlights, I think it does anyway, I think it really highlights these ridges as opposed to the valleys. Traditionally, Shetland knitting was done with yarn over increases, so that gives you the lace effect, that gives you the eyelet, and knit 2 together decreases. They're all just knit 2 together decreases. They're all just knit 2 together decreases. That means they're all leaning the same way. And when you look at the written instructions and then chart it out, it will tell you knit 2 together 3 times, yarn over knit 1 6 times. 5, 6. And then knit 3 together or knit 2 together 3 times. That's how the instructions read. That's how it looks when it's charted. You have a knit 2 together right beside this eyelet. And on the other side, you have a plain stitch. And then the knit 2 together right beside the eyelet. So these yarn overs are not centered on the stitch pattern. It drives me crazy. They're also all leaning to the right. Now, because the next row above is going to be a garter ridge, you're not going to see the lean that much, but still, it's annoying to me. It's just really annoying. So let me just double check this before I go on. I just want to make sure I get my, yes, I did. Life is good. When I drew the repeats, I just wanted to make sure I got them in the place I really wanted them. Otherwise, I was going to have to think a little harder today. So I want to make it symmetrical. So I'm going to take my knit 2 together 3 times. I'm going to take yarn over knit 1, yarn over knit 1, yarn over knit 1, yarn over knit 1, yarn over 5. I've got 5 eyelets now. Knit 1, yarn over. Now I'm going to do decreases. And I'm going to do left-leaning decreases. So these decreases are going to lean towards each other in the fabric. And this is the center stitch. There's your plain stitch here that we've moved now in the middle of the decreases. And now this whole stitch is symmetrical. You've got, well, I add a stitch. So this is a repeat of 18 stitches. This is a repeat of 18 plus 1. This is 18 stitches. This is 18 plus 1. And that, right, will really improve the symmetry. So you've got a plain stitch. You've got decreases leaning away from the holes. And then you have holes starting immediately after those decreases. This stitch is symmetrical. I like this stitch. I never go traditional. I do this. So it means instead of just a plain repeat of 18 stitches, I have to go 18 plus 1. You need this stitch on the other side to make it truly symmetrical that matches this plain stitch. This plain stitch comes up in the middle of all these decreases, and I just like it better. That's the version I used in the baby blanket. So this is Stitch Play 26B. And I used a variegated yarn to make a really pretty little baby blanket. This is the size that you would put on a stroller or, you know, in a car seat if you live in Ontario and not Florida or California. But it's that size, right? This wasn't a big one, although the pattern tells you how to make it bigger. So it's just a little more symmetrical. I think it looks better. And when you know, it just looks better.
Nice.
I wanted to prove again that this ripple stitch almost always looks good in a variegated yarn. Doesn't really matter whether they're random or self-striping. It almost doesn't matter. This just looks retro in variegated yarn. I don't know anybody. Well, okay, I spent a lot of my childhood in nursing homes. My mother's aunt was in a nursing home when not long after she died, my grandmother moved into a nursing home, and my mom went to visit them every day. So I don't know one person in a nursing home when I was growing up that didn't have a ripple stitch Afghan at the foot of their bed.
Yes.
And 9 times out of 10, it was a variegated yarn. So to me, this is just a really classic retro project. This is the 18 stitch repeat. It's the one we just looked at. Right? 18 stitches plus 1. This is what we just did. But you can make them smaller. So here's a 12 stitch. This is 12 plus 1. 12 stitch repeat. So again, 2 plain rows, 2 stocking stitch rows. Row 1 is knit, row 2 is purled, and you can do this stitch pattern in the round. That's not a problem at all. You would just take out this 1 stitch to make it symmetrical. Just do the 12 stitch repeat, and just remember that 4th round should be purled around if you want that garter ridge. You don't have to have it, and we'll talk about that too. But here we go. 12 stitch repeat. It's going to be smaller. There's not going to be as many decreases. So we'll do 2 decreases. 4 eyelets, 4 yarn overs, 2 more decreases, this time SSKs or slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, whatever your preference is. And then you have the same symmetrical stitch. This plain stitch comes up between, right in the middle of the decreases. The plain stitch here comes right in the middle of the eyelets. It's beautifully symmetrical. You add 1 stitch at the end to make sure that you've got that extra stitch, that plain stitch on either end of the piece you're knitting. And there you can make it smaller. You can also make it bigger. So I've got 4 decreases. 8 eyelets. And 4 decreases. You can go as big as you want. This is 24 stitches. You might be seeing a pattern. 12 for this smaller one, 18 for the first one, 24. It's always adding 6 stitches. But there you go, perfectly symmetrical. A plain stitch in the middle of the decreases and a plain stitch in the middle of the eyelets. Beautifully symmetrical. You can play around with it a little more. So I'll go back to the 12 plus 1. You can combine 1 decrease, a plain stitch, and a decrease into an SSK. So we'll put the SSK at the end. And your chart now looks like this. This is 10 stitches plus 1. It's the same number of increases, same number of eyelets, same number of decreases, but you're doing a double decrease here with a single decrease on either side of it. So we've taken this down to 10 stitches. You can do the same thing with the bigger one. Well, you can do the same thing with all of them. So we're going to put the CDD at the end. We only need 3 more here. Yep, 8. Just looked a little odd, but it's right. So we've got a double decrease taking the place of decreases here, and it takes away the plain stitch between them. So now if this was 24 plus 1, this is 22 plus 1. And like I said, you can make these as big or as small as suits your design. You can't really go less than this. If you do, what you're getting is that border design that I put on the on the border of a lot of my shawls. It's sort of a ripple, but it's only got 2 eyelets. So it's not a smooth round ripple. Right? When it's only 6 stitches, you don't get this smooth ripple like this. You get more points like this. But technically, you can go down to 6 stitches, but you can go as big as you want. This is the 24 stitch one. And I've got a few plain stitches on either side just to make the washcloth big enough to use. Right, so I just put a 24 stitch motif in the middle and 3 extra stitches, plain stitches on each side, and then 3 garter stitches to give me a selvage. So all of these charts are in your handout. And you should be able to pick and choose from any of those charts or decide, I want to go really big. I'm going to go 36 stitches. I'm going to go 42 stitches and make these really lovely undulating waves of patterns. Any questions about basic ripples? All is silent. I'm taking that as a no.
I have a question.
Yep.
So I noticed that the drop stitches were always even numbers. Is that by chance or by design? Like you 4 or 6 or
the eyelets.
yeah.
Yeah. When you said drop stitches, you had me a little
Oh,
confused.
sorry. The eyelets. Yeah.
Yep. The eyelets are always even.
And that's part of the design. You can't do it with an odd number. Okay.
Well, think about this. You're always decreasing stitches in pairs.
Got it. Okay.
Right? Like we did it a little differently here. We did, if you count them up, if you count up the decreases, there's still an even number. This is 2, 3, 4.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Right? Yep. So these are all even to correspond with these. So you can have other ways of doing stitch patterns that will undulate. But for the simple ripple stitches, yes, you want an even number of eyelets so that you can combine that with decreases that come in twos. Anything else?
So Nancy, I have a question of your CDD chart,
Yep.
the one that shows the CDD.
Yep.
So that decreases 2,
Yep.
but you have it under 1 stitch. My brain isn't computing.
So when you okay, it consumes 3 stitches, but it produces 1.
Okay.
So the eyelets here compensate for all the decreases. We'll count them up. So
Right.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8
Mm-hmm.
increases. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 decreases. So the increase here, right down here, we only had a single decrease. So all of these decreases took 8 spaces in the chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces here. So you can see we've lost a space. So yeah, you sometimes you'll see no stitch symbols on a chart because they don't add up anymore. But in this pattern, they always add up.
They always, okay.
Yep. You will always have, every row will have the same number of stitches. Now, you do have to remember, and it will say this in your handout, at least I hope it says it in your handout. It's in the chart symbols section. This last decrease, when you're doing it across the row, it's always a CDD, but when it comes to the end of the row, it's an SSK.
Okay. That makes more sense.
It is in your handout.
Thank you.
So yeah, that will make a difference.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions about the simple ripples?
Nancy, if you were to do it the traditional way, the way that you don't like, okay, would the fabric bias?
Maybe.
I have never heard anyone complaining about the fabric biasing.
Okay. Fair
but
enough.
I have never knit it because I don't like it.
I don't like it either, but I'm just wondering, because you have all those left-leaning decreases, would it pull, or right-leaning decreases, would it pull the fabric in that direction?
Yep. Like I said, I've never heard anyone complain about it happening. But I've never actually tried it. I would think it would bias too, but I've never tried it. Maybe the eyelets help to even it out a little.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at it, when I see it on the screen on your chart, it makes me think it will bias.
Yep.
Okay. Not that I want to do it that way, because I don't. Because I agree with you. Balanced is better. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me to have everything going the same direction.
Yep. So we mentioned the handout a few times just recently. So I've put the link in the chat again. If there's anybody who came later, came into the room later and didn't see the link, it's there again now.
Nancy
So,
and Katie, you mentioned that something that sort of alluded to you don't have to knit it. You don't have to purl that row around or knit that row around.
yep.
Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah. If you want a smooth fabric, purl it back. Right? This
You don't get the
fabric, this fabric is definitely textured. It's not just rippling up and down, it's definitely textured with that garter ridge. If you would prefer a smooth fabric, then just purl it back or knit it if you're working in the round, and you'll still get the wonderful ripple effect. Your fabric will still undulate, but it will be smooth. It won't have that texture.
Will it curl? Maybe.
It will be more likely to curl than if it has these garter ridges.
Right.
Right? Now, doing it this way, with the decreases on the edge, make your stocking stitch fabric less likely to curl anyway, because all of these decreases at the edge of the fabric tend to help keep it flat. It's still mostly stocking stitch. It's still going to curl a little. That's the nature of stocking stitch. But doing it with these increases at the ends of the beginning and the end of the row is going to help keep it flat.
Good point.
You don't have to. Oh, I wish I had a different color. You could start with the eyelets instead. So I've just put it one row down. You can start these ripples with the eyelets instead. So this would be a replacement for row 3. I just drew it below so that you can see it easily. So yeah, you can do it. You can orient it with the decreases in the center. And I think if you wanted to put a panel of this up the front of a blouse, if you centered it on the eyelets, this would come up under your chin. If you centered it on the decreases, it would come down under your chin. Let me get the baby blanket because it's a little bigger. Right? If you centered your blouse up top with the eyelets in the center, this would come up under your chin. But if you centered the pattern with the decreases under your chin, it would naturally dip down. So there might be reasons that you want to begin and end with eyelets, but your fabric's more likely to curl. When you begin and end with decreases, those decreases tend to stabilize the sides of the fabric, at least a little. Right? There's just garter ridges here. It is still mostly stocking stitch. Well, let me tell you about the cowl I'm wearing. Okay. The camera's going to move. Close your eyes if you get seasick. Just wanted to raise it up a little bit so we can see more of the stitch pattern. So I decided to have a little fun with the 2 yarns I was given. There's a group that I Zoom with, and there are a couple of dyers in the group, and they do these dye challenges that result in amazingly beautiful yarns. So we meet together as a group. They show us some photographs. As a group, we vote. And when we've narrowed it down to 1 photograph, the 2 dyers take that photograph away and they dye yarn or fiber inspired by that photograph. And this yarn, this wonderful multicolored yarn, was inspired by a NASA photo of the Eagle Nebula. And then people started asking, well, couldn't we have a coordinating solid to go with this? And so Stephanie dyed this. So I put them together in a little cowl. I had visions of a big scarf. It was like minus 30-degree wind chills here when I started designing this project. And I had visions of this big scarf. But I had 2 skeins of DK weight yarn. I wasn't going to get a big, huge wrap around your neck 4 times kind of scarf. So I thought, well, let's be practical. Let's knit something smaller that is still going to be very warm. And I have a camel coat that this bandana style will fit into the collar of beautifully. It's going to be great. But I did a lot of swatching with different stitch patterns, and I decided I would use a ripple stitch. But let's just switch cameras for a second. So the cowl that's behind me, that's the one I talked about at the last Fibre Love Affair. And we had a lesson on mosaic knitting. That's the shape I was doing. And I had this idea in my mind that I would like to do that kind of interesting hem and then a plainer stitch around the rest of the body of the cowl. I wanted to do that again. So I did that with this. I gave it ripple stitches at the start. And then I did a plain, well, lovely, it's not that plain, a garter ridge fabric for the rest of it. And I wanted that solid to recede into the stocking stitch. And I wanted the multicolored nebula shade to pop out on the garter stitch. So I arranged them that way. So I wanted to end with a repeat of the nebula multicolor, so that then my next stocking stitch would be the blue. And then I just alternated every 2 rows. 2 rows of stocking stitch, 2 rows of garter stitch, all the way up through the rest of the cowl. And that gave me a straight edge to seam at the side, right? If I'd used the ripple stitch all the way to the top, I would have had a rippling end to stitch to the side, and that would have been much more difficult. With these garter ridges, I had a straight edge that I could seam to the side. I wanted a little bit of fun. So this is in tumbling stripes. I am not going to give you a lesson on tumbling stripes. Rest assured that the pattern tells you how to do the stripes in this, I call it tumbling, in this kind of tumbling design. It starts with a wide band of one color, and then a medium band, and then of the second color, and a narrow band of the third, and then a wide band of the second color. It just tumbles in a really interesting way. There's 2 colors, 1 stitch pattern, and 3 widths of stripes. But the pattern will tell you, won't explain tumbling stripes, but the pattern has the striping sequence in it so that you can tumble your stripes just like I've done.
Did that project use both of your skeins?
Oh no. It
Okay.
was together, it was about 115 grams, so a little more than
A little bit
half.
more than one of, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
I've got
asking because
almost,
I have 2 skeins of the challenge yarn, so that's why I was asking.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now this took a little more than half of each skein.
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
I've got quite a bit left over.
So I could make that in a matching hat or something.
I would imagine so, yes. I
Yeah.
haven't decided what I'm going to do with the other yarn, but
Yeah.
yes, we talked about this at Stitch Play. I'm thinking a hat with you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
one ripple as an accent would be rather cute.
Yeah.
This, just so you know, I'll go back to this camera. This is a 10 stitch repeat.
Yeah.
Right, just to get the width I wanted. I wanted this one to be pretty much the same size as the one I did in mosaic knitting. So I really wanted it to be about 8.5 inches wide. So I played around with 10 and 12 and 18 stitches, and then and 16 stitches until I found a number that gave me the width I wanted. So I've got 4 repeats of the 10 stitch pattern. So yeah, that's the cowl. I love this shape, right? I think it's a versatile shape because well, not versatile in that you can't wear it a whole bunch of different ways. Although I know Susan has been known to turn it around and wear it backwards so that the V goes down her back and you know, covers that from the air conditioning that's blowing down over her head. But I think it fits into a coat collar so well. And that's why I like this style. I also like, you know, great big tall ones that come up over your nose because it gets to be -30 wind chills here. This doesn't pull up over your nose as well because of course it comes down at the front. But it's lovely under a coat. And that's when I couldn't have the great big huge scarf I wanted, I decided this is what I'll do because this I will wear over and over and over again.
Oh, what? Anything I've looked for today.
Yeah.
Nancy,
Yep.
what did you do with all your ends? Do you knit them in as you go?
I did not actually. I wove them in at the end. Now, I don't have to share that. So, I literally cut my yarns well, it was on this side, so it went into the seam. But I literally cut my ends with each of the stripes, just because I was having a hard time keeping my tension even when I was carrying the yarn up so many rows. But for this part, where it's 2 row stripes, you do not cut your yarn. You bring the new color up from behind the old color, and that twists them as you go and creates a lovely knotted edge. That's the edge. So I cut it here just because I was having trouble carrying it up so many rows, but for 2 row stripes, never cut your yarn. It's so easy to just carry it up. Just you always bring the new color, the one you need to use next, up from behind the color you just used, and it just twists them together without you having to think more about twisting. You can do it the other way. You can always bring it up from the front, but you will have then sort of a barber pole edge. If you bring it up from behind, you get a kind of knotted edge that looks so much like garter stitch. They might as well just be garter stitch.
Nancy, what weight yarn did you use on that project?
It was a DK weight.
DK, thank you.
Yeah.
Clifford's here.
Let's try again. Okay, so I wanted to show you a few of the patterns that I have designed using ripple stitches. Most of you will have seen these. The most recent is the stitch play, right? Lovely little blanket, 18 stitch repeat, a lot of fun. Most of you, many of you, will have seen a watery vortex. This is a boomerang shaped shawl. And I was asked specifically for a design that would be good for people who are new to lace knitting. And I thought, well, ripple stitch. You can't go wrong with a ripple stitch for people who are new to knitting lace because 3 of the rows are plain. Right? You only have to do those eyelets and decreases 1 row out of 4. So I started at the point with the garter ridges. It's very similar to the cowl design. And then at the end, I did the ripple. You can see how they merge together in this photo. And this is also a 10 stitch repeat. And you can see, if you're paying attention, the CDDs going up the center. You can see you get, right, I'm knitting it this way. Oops, sorry, I'm knitting it this way from bottom to top here. So you can see as you change from the garter ridge to the ripple stitch, it distorts that last ridge or 2, but not very much. And then you get the wonderful scalloped edge at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Right, just a little boomerang. It's a one skein project. Very similar to the cowl. It's the same idea, but this was just 1 yarn, right? It's just a lovely, somewhere between tonal and variegated colorway. It's quite lovely. And then the 12 stitch. This is a shawl I designed for Cascade Yarns. They had limited yarns. It was a brand new colorway. They sent me a skein to play with, and then they said, you can have 2 colors. That's all you can have. You can have 2. I said, all right. And I chose 2 colors, and I designed a shawl, boomerang shaped. It uses the 12 stitch repeat. You can see the scalloped edge that you get. And I just striped it, even stripes. Right? I'm not going to play around. I've got 2 balls. I'm not going to play around trying to shape proportions of stripes to make sure I can use up both of those balls. I just started at the beginning and did 4 repeats with each color up the whole length of the shawl. But that's the 12 stitch repeat. And if we zoom in, you can see the garter ridges. I left them in. Right? I thought about doing them in stocking stitch and purling back that row, but after swatching it, I thought, no, I need the ridges. So I put them in. This is also a 12 stitch repeat. This stitch pattern is called Crest of the Wave. You do the eyelet maneuvers and the decreases every right side row for a while. And then you do your knit rows, your ridges. So you're playing with the placement of the plain rows and the patterned rows. but it's still the same manipulations. This is still the same 12 stitch pattern. And because it's 12 stitches in 12 rows, it meant I could do this wonderful scalloped edge, right? This sawtooth edge with decreases as I shaped the boomerang. So that was a lot of fun. And I did three samples for them. This was a lovely fingering weight modal and cashmere from Universal Yarns. The pink was an alpaca blend from Bergère de France. And this striped one, this was a lot of fun. So I did the eyelet rows in a semi-solid, and I did the ridges in a variegated. And that was from Zen Yarn Garden, who's no longer dying. People have moved on to other things, but you can't buy their yarns anymore. So that was fun. But that is essentially a 12-stitch ripple, and I've just changed where the plain stitch or plain rows are and where the eyelet rows are. I did the same for this one. Whoops. Oh, look, I got close-ups of the ripples at the bottom. So here we go. I did these maneuvers every right side row and just purled all the wrong side rows. So this is completely a stocking stitch fabric of ripples. And you can see that the ripples are more exaggerated because the increases and decreases come every right side row. In the ripple, it's more gentle because you're doing those increases and decreases every fourth row. Here I did them every second row. So I get a more exaggerated. And I chose this stitch pattern very specifically because this colorway from the Fergus Fibre Company reminded me of a sunny summer's day at the beach. So I wanted to do something that would give me waves breaking on the sand. So I did a ripple stitch. We got to do a ripple. So I swatched. I know this is a bad word for some people, but I swatched several different versions of ripple stitches and decided that I really wanted to exaggerate it a little. And I really wanted the bulk of the shawl to be plain because a ripple stitch is a pretty plain stitch, but it does fight a little with the multicolored yarn. So it's a regular stitch, which is why I like to use it with multicolored yarns. But I decided to do a lot of plain stocking stitch and then add this border at the bottom. And then, because I had the yarn, I decided to do it in a worsted weight. So the first was a fingering weight. It was sock yarn from the Fergus Fibre Company. This is worsted weight. They are exactly the same number of rows and stitches. But because the one yarn is twice as heavy as the other, I get a much larger shawl. And you can see plain and then the stocking stitch or the ripple stitch. So there it is. Done every other row, you really can see that it exaggerates. And rather than trying to make this edge pretty and rounded, I just pinned out the points to get those lovely scalloped points at the bottom. And then the last pattern in my repertoire that uses pretty standard ripple stitches is Bogner, and Bogner is beautiful. I knit this shawl with Judy's handspun. It's Polworth. I think it's Polworth. I don't think it's Polworth and silk. I think the pink one was Polworth and silk, but I'd have to look. And of course, the suggested yarn doesn't come up in Ravelry because it's not a commercially available yarn. So here I did a wonderful shape with a triangle at the back that I did in the ripple stitch, and in her multicolored yarns. It was absolutely spectacular. And then I did wide wings. So on these border edges, I did a double increase every right side row. And it gives you a real almost crescent shape, because those wings are much wider than on a standard top-down triangle. So this, I think, is just a spectacular shawl. This is a spectacular pattern with spectacular yarn. These close-ups were, the colors are actually washed out a little. This is a little dark, but this is truer to the color. This is a little light. But you can see this is where the triangle in the center back of the shawl meets the wings. And I maintained the garter ridge across the wings. I know Sue Snyder, who's here, has also knit this pattern. Oddly enough, she also used a yarn that was mostly green. But that's, which, okay, I find highly fitting, since Bogner is marshy. We used to take the high school used to take the students out orienteering through the Bogner Marsh. So the fact that we've used these wonderful green colors is quite fitting, I think. But I think this is just a beautiful pattern. It's one of the prettiest shawls I've ever knit. And much of that is due to the wonderful handspun yarn that I was given.
It knitted up really nice. I used hand spun, and it's my favorite shawl.
Well, there you go. So other stitch patterns ripple. And I'm just going to go back down to this camera for a sec. So other stitch patterns will ripple, and they ripple because, let's pick this one, this size. Our decreases are all removed from our increases. They're not side by side. So you don't yarn over, knit two together, yarn over, knit two together like Katie likes to do. I would be more likely to yarn over SSK, but you know, Katie likes her knit the two together. So instead of putting the knit two together, instead of putting the decreases beside the yarn over increases, they're all removed from the yarn overs. And that's what causes the rippling. These decreases will all tend to pull down. And so it pushes the yarn overs up. Well, other stitches do this principle. They're just not these kind of simple ripple stitches. So this Shetland sampler stole that I designed along with a knitalong with Hands-On Knitting Center uses a horseshoe stitch at the end. Well, you can see it's hard because it's, let's see, put that over my shoulder. There we go. We can see that better. So the edge of this ripples. It's not a ripple stitch, but you can see the ridge. That's a CDD. That's the decrease that is used in the stitch, and it's removed from the yarn overs. And so you get a ripple, and it created this wonderful scalloped hem at the bottom of this shawl or wrap. It's more precisely a wrap or a stole. It is a rectangle shape. Knowing that the pattern at the beginning was going to scallop like that, I knew I needed a pattern at the end that would also scallop. And so I chose a traditional Shetland stitch pattern called Madeira Cascade, which also has you can see that vertical ridge of CDDs. It has decreases that are removed from all those yarn overs. And so I was able to get a scalloped edge at my bound off edge as well as on my cast on edge. I did those on a garter stitch background. They could just as easily have been done on a stocking stitch background. I just designed this so that the first section was garter stitch and the second was stocking stitch and the third was garter stitch and so on to the other end. This is Dundalk, for anyone who wants to look it up, Dundalk 25-08. So there are other variations that you can find. And I think the only thing that's left on my handout that I could talk about, because all of the links for the patterns I showed you are in the handout. The only other thing I probably have to talk about is the fact that I am hosting a short tutorial. They've gone quite well the first 2 times I've done it. So I've done it again, and I've had a specific request to show my tips on knitting a garter tab. So that's what I've put together. It's available on PayHip. I haven't had time yet to put a discount code in. But when I do, it will be the same one as I have on Ravelry for Fibre Love Affair. So I'll put that in the chat. FEBFLA.
And when is that,
20.
Nancy?
Sorry, that was all garbled. I couldn't hear it.
When are you planning that?
It is for March 18th, or let me double check.
It's the 15th.
There we go. It's it's the third Sunday. I do them on the third Sunday. So FEBFLA 20, February Fibre Love Affair. That will get you a 20% discount on today's pattern, but it will work for all the other self-published patterns in my Ravelry store. So you can get 20% off until the end of the month on all of my patterns in my Ravelry store. Later this evening, after we end, I will use this same code, FEBFLA20, and I'll put that in my PayHip store, and you'll be able to get the handout. And there's always 2 choices. You can buy the handout alone, the PDF only, or you can buy the PDF plus a live virtual tutorial. They're 20 minutes. We can stretch them a little bit, stretch out to 40 to answer questions. But people are rather liking this short format where I take a topic and just focus on that for half an hour. So I'm going to focus on the garter tab for a half an hour, and I'm going to, it will be mostly demonstration. There's not a lot of knitting time, but we can knit together a traditional tab, and then I can show you some of my fun tricks. And by the end of the evening tonight, you'll be able to use that FEBFLA20 on Ravelry and on PayHip to get a 20% discount. If you can't come to the live tutorial, you can always buy the PDF only and get the handout. Phew, I got 1:30. Any questions? I think people are happy.
We're happy. Thank you.
Thank you. The mystery.
Thank you so much. It was fabulous.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good.